Hi, everybody. I'm Raman. Uh, from time immemorial, everybody is always looking for their next job where they could do half the work and get double the salary. And then startups come along, and then they say, what if we make you work double the time and give you half the salary? Because here we're always looking for people who are the builders or who want to build something for who knows what, and then create things that are complex, solve problems that are difficult. And that's the kind of team we want to build. So I have been working within this topic of building teams and talent for startups in complex deep tech areas for the last 14, 15 years. Interestingly, if you try to look for me on LinkedIn, this is what you can find. Like a really old photo of me that just says startup operator. And if you go down, it will say working with 30 VCs and 100 startups in stealth requests. Very cryptic, right? Because the way I work with startups is much more complex than to say, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, because it's a variety of fun things I'm doing. But to give a short intro of who I am, I got a front row seat. So I grew up in the Swedish startup ecosystem in Stockholm. And I got a front row seat to work with two of their largest ecosystems. One is called Sting, that has around 500 startups that they've invested in Stockholm. Other one is called Norrsken or Norsken, which also has another 150 startups that they've helped and support and scale. So I was the first head of talent back in the days for both of those ecosystems. Then I started working with VCs and supporting their portfolio companies. And I expanded beyond Stockholm. So in Finland, of course, I would work with Voima Ventures or Icebreaker or different other Finnish VCs. Same in Norway, same in Poland, Germany, HV Capital, or Denmark. So I kind of work, or Octopus Ventures in the UK. So I get a front row seat across Europe to work with some of the coolest companies. So what do I do? What exactly am I talking about on the team and talent? I'm going to share 3 learnings that I had that blew my mind when I discovered it myself. Learning 1 is there are 2 kinds of talents. Not all talents are same. So what I mean by 2 kinds of talents is, normally every startup that is trying to build their founding team, every startup that is trying to build their kind of initial team that can crack the 0 to 1 barrier, they are looking for the highly skilled, highly risk-taking, equity-loving, people who are willing to take a bet, do something enormously interesting and fun, but then they keep attracting all the time people who are looking for higher salaries, better job titles, bigger brands, cooler benefits, higher flexibility. So what is this? What the heck is happening here? And this is where the first discovery came along. I identified 2 interesting behavioral patterns when it comes to talents. One behavioral pattern is called the trading pattern. These are people who are looking to trade their skills for the highest price in the market. So if I have skills is an asset, I could choose to trade the skills for the highest buyer in the market. And if I'm willing to take risk, and I want to trade it with the highest risk taker, then I'm going to be a consultant because I could sell for today's market price. If I'm a medium level risk taker, but I still want to trade my skills for the today's market price, then I'll be an employee who jumps every 2 years, the jumpers. Then if I don't want to take any risk, but I still want to trade my skills for today's market price, I'll be an employee who stays in a company for 5 to 10 years. But we are not looking for them, are we? We are looking for the other side, the people who are talent investor behaviors. Talent investment behavior is a fun behavior to observe because these are the people who are willing to sell their skills, not sell their skills, invest their skills for equity. So these are people who want to invest their skill in a company, technology, for stocks, equity, options. And they are not looking for immediate returns. They are looking for 10x returns over a period of 5 years. And these talent investors are who we colloquially call entrepreneurial. And these entrepreneurial people also are not all come in same sizes. There are 3 risk takers here. The 0 to 1 entrepreneurs, 1 to 10 entrepreneurs, 10 to 100 entrepreneurs. The entrepreneurs who are willing to start the first 2, 3 people in the founding team, who wants to start being the first 20 people, the first 50 people, all of them entrepreneurial nonetheless. But as I was saying, you can put up a job ad, you could do headhunting, you could include some recruiters, and then you can find the talent traders, the regular employees. But how do you find entrepreneurs? That's not easy. So this is the way I want to give you a way to find entrepreneurs. And to find entrepreneurs, you need to crack two puzzles. Puzzle one is, who can understand the potential of your startup? Who can understand what you're doing and how good you're doing it? And to understand the potential of your company, your startup exists in what I call a series of concentric contexts. So your startup, you have your startup, and your startup has your niche. It exists in an industry. It exists in a customer segment. It exists in a specific market. It exists in a VC ecosystem. It exists in series of contexts. And for another person to be able to understand your company, the reason why it's critical is, now I want to tell you something that's very obvious, but you never thought about it this way, is if you're recruiting an employee for a company, it's a one-part evaluation. You are evaluating the employee and recruiting the employee. But if you're recruiting an entrepreneur, it's a two-way street. The entrepreneur is actually evaluating you as a startup, and you are evaluating the entrepreneur. And both parties are evaluating each other. And for that, you need to have the kind of contextual overlap that you need to find the person. Which means, so to go back to contextual overlap is, who are the other entrepreneurs who are working with similar customers? Who are the other entrepreneurs who are working with similar technology? So you need to not think in job titles. You're not recruiting a sales manager with kind of sales experience. You're recruiting someone who has worked in commercialization within your customer segment. So you have to think in context first. Second is timing. So just because two people are able to understand each other doesn't mean that they're able to move to your company. So you have to figure out the timing puzzle. Timing puzzle is, who is now ready to move to your startup? And I found this interesting model. The model is, if you take a startup and plot it across pre-seed, seed, growth in different investment phases, you'll realize that when a company raises their Series A or Series B, actually some of their early employees would want to move to another early startup and start their journey again. And the reason why this behavior happens is, it's very hard for an individual to evolve at the speed of a company. So let's take an example like IQM. IQM in Finland, of course, is growing so fast, but then the employee will not be able to, or the founders will not be able to evolve at that speed. So at some point they feel like, no, the company is too big for me, and some of those early employees would want to start their next venture or join another early stage startup. So one fun way to make anybody a serial entrepreneur is actually following the timeline of the startup and then figuring out exactly at which milestone a person has a higher probability to move to your startup. And of course, you can also track these signals that are even more powerful, which is when a company gets acquired, when a company gets merged, when there is a market focus change, when there is a lack of funding, because in the pre-seed stage, there are high failure rate, and those founders are always looking for their next venture. One thing I could guarantee you is anyone who's worked in the startup world and has enjoyed this entrepreneur life will not be able to go back to Ericsson. I'll tell you that shit right now. So one lesson I want to end up in the first part is, if you combine this context, who can understand me and my company and its potential, and who has the perfect timing? If you combine these both, now you have a pool of people that you should talk to that can join your company. But then the problem is, you'll be stuck with a second puzzle, which is the affordability paradox. Who can I afford to join my company? And this is actually a fun key paradox that you have to understand. We did a series of over 100 recruitments. Whenever a first deep tech company is looking, when a deep tech company is looking to make their first commercial hire, or the first person who would join as the commercial person for the company, which experience bracket do you think was easiest to recruit? Is it 5 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 20, or 20 plus? It was consistently easy to recruit 15 or more year experienced than the 5-year experienced. But it would sound completely bananas in your head, because you always think the lower the experience, it's easy to recruit them, then higher the experience, it's difficult. But actually in a startup, it's not. The higher the experience, it's easy for them to evaluate the potential of your company. They don't have much more reliance on the salary. So they are actually in a better way to be talent investors than someone who is actually relying on their salary or early in their career. So affordability paradox is the talents you think you can afford, you cannot. The talents you think you cannot afford, you can. Because you're not an employer looking for an employee, you're an entrepreneur offering a chance to invest in your company. So you have to think literally like attracting investors. So if a 1 million fund says no, you're not going to go for a €500,000 fund. You're going to go for 10 million fund or 50 million fund or 100 million fund. Because when you look for investors and capital, you know that you have to go for bigger and bigger investors. Same for talents. When a 5-year experience says no, you go for 8-year. 8-year says no, you go for 10-year. 10-year says no, you go for 15. So exactly. So when you're looking for entrepreneurs, every rejection you go up in experience. If you're looking for talent traders and employees, if you're not able to afford a 5-year, you go down in experience. The final lesson I want to leave you with in the last 2 minutes I have is trust. Trust is a funny little thing because you need it to actually recruit somebody. There is actually a trust threshold that you need to meet. Just because you both have a context overlap. So here in this room, you and me, we have a contextual overlap because I come from the startup scene in the Nordics, you come from the startup scene. We are both working in similar markets, similar startups, but still, we would not be able to work together because we need to figure out the trust. Are we able to trust each other? And in Europe, especially in Nordics, trust is derived from networks. But the good news is, in my LinkedIn, let's say if I'm connected with 10,000 people, which is the number of first-degree connections I have, the brilliance is that's 3.1 million second-degree network that I'm connected to through them, which means my extended first, second-degree network is in millions. And of course, these are some fun buggers that are in my second-degree network, which I didn't even know they existed as a mutual connection. Connects me with Barack Obama or Nadella or OpenAI team or yeah, so these gangs. So which means your second-degree network is much larger, but you need the lens of the context overlap and timing to sift through those millions to find the 10 people you should talk to this week. And how do you do that? Your LinkedIn feed, as an example, is a gold mine. Because your LinkedIn feed is constantly saying, this company is looking for a new CEO, and then there's a leadership change. There's a high probability of people who want to join your company. Your LinkedIn feed would say, this company raised a Series A or Series B, which means those early employees of those companies are ready to move to your company. So every update that you see on your LinkedIn feed is actually a high probability or low probability event that you can act upon to bring talents, customers, partners, board members into your company. Everyone wants to be a serial entrepreneur given the timing and opportunity. So with context, timing, and trust, there are no strangers. You can recruit anybody, anywhere in the globe, because they're all your allies, not strangers. And of course, if this topic interested you and you want to dig deeper, I want to personally invite everybody here to the workshop that we'll be having this afternoon at Palaver downstairs. And in the small group of people that are here, I would love to connect, of course, with every one of you because we could chat and be in touch and follow each other's journey and support each other. So scan the QR code or find my name and would love to connect with you. And you'll see this old photo and the startup operator on the top. So thank you so much, everybody.